Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Rock and Roll Spot Connection with another installment of Mutant Monday. And as I mentioned last week, this week we'll be doing a top 10 list. I say this is top 10, the 10 best Wolverine stories, but it could just be looked at as being my 10 favorite Wolverine stories, however you want to look at it. Now, some caveats. One, we're focusing on multi-issue stories. So sadly, all those single issue stories kind of just get pushed aside. Which is sad because there are some really good ones out there. Next, we're focusing primarily on stuff from Wolverine solo titles. Now there are a few runs from team books, but these are team books where he was the leader and was kind of was kind of at the center of things. So yeah. That being said, let's get on to the list. Starting at number 10, we've got Wolverine Goes to Hell. So this was used to kind of, in some ways, to kick off the Heroic Age reboot of Wolverine's solo book. A group called the Red Right Hand basically made a deal with a demon, and the demon possessed Wolverine and sent his soul to hell. And so, the demon in Wolverine's body then proceeded to wreak havoc on Earth, while the Red Right Hand went after allies and family, while Wolverine's soul fought its way out of hell. So, yeah, good stuff. Next up, we've got the Craig Kyle Chris Yost run of X-Force, which spun out of Messiah Complex and features Wolverine leading a mutant hit squad and having to deal with having to deal with stuff like going after threats to mutant and killing them. And Wolverine, who's often referred to as being a killer, isn't too pleased with it. He sees it as a necessary evil, but even still, there's a lot more going on with the character than just, ooh, I'm killing people, yeah. He does it because he has been basically convinced, yeah, this is the best thing to do, the best way to go. So yeah. Next up, we've got the Rick Remender run of Uncanny X-Force, which spun out of the Kyle Yost run, as well as Second Coming. And so now you got X-Force, which is completely off the books. Now what really gets things going here is Wolverine. After the events of Schism and during the whole Regenesis era, you had Wolverine basically running a kill squad, and at the same time running the new mutants, basically running the new Xavier School and trying to live up to Xavier's dream. And his fellow teachers were not entirely happy with him doing this when they eventually found out. Next up, we've got Enemy of the State. So Enemy of the State is the collective name for a 12-issue run written by Mark Millar and drawn by John Romita Jr. It's technically two stories: Enemy of the State and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. In Enemy of the State, Wolverine gets kidnapped and brainwashed by Hydra and the Hand and turned against the superhero community, and he is really good at he's really good at what he does. He takes down multiple targets. He kills North Star of the X-Men. You also have a lot of inner monologue between the two sides of his mind at this point. You've got the brainwashed side saying, yeah, do the evil thing. And, Wolverine himself's like, no, just, yeah. Anyway, so once that came to an end, though, then came Agent of Shield. Wolverine was deprogrammed and basically pointed at Hydra in the hand and went through his wrecked house and he crippled Hydra in the hand. And for a while, it also had the death. It had the for a brief while the death of Baron Strucker. Also introduced the Gorgon, a mutant who, well, turns gold to stone with a look, like a Gorgon. Next up, we've got Old Man Logan, also written by Mark Miller. So Old Man Logan, while being I would say to a degree, Old Man Logan inspired the film Logan. But Old Man Logan itself is very different, if for no other reason than the fact that it's in a dystopic future of the Marvel Universe as a whole, not just the X-Men verse. So, yeah. So, Hawkeye, 50 years after the supervillains killed all the superheroes, Wolverine and Hawkeye go on a road trip so that Wolverine can have some rent money to pay the Hulk gang, who are his landlords. But we find out what happened to the X-Men, and it's one of the most tragic things. We see what's become of the U.S. since Red Skull took over, and it's insane. Next up, we've got Death of Wolverine. So Wolverine got infected with a microvirus that hindered his healing factor. That's hindered his healing factor, and it turns out that the way it worked was, if I remember correctly, if he was cured of the microvirus, it would get out and would be and it would just wreak havoc on the world. So he got, okay, fine, I'm not gonna let that happen. So little by little, he started to give in to age and adamantium poisoning, and when all was said and done, he died he was encased in adamantium, or molten adamantium, and died. Next up, we've got the first ever Wolverine miniseries by artist Frank Miller and writer Chris Claremont. So this was actually part of this was the focus, was the inspiration for the film The Wolverine. It's one of the Wolverine in Japan stories, and it's quite good. But it sets up a lot of of things that happen for the Japanese story. A major thing being, at the time, he was in love with a woman named Mariko Yoshida. They got engaged, and suddenly the engagement got called off. And she was married off someone, and it turns out that her father is a high-ranking Yakuza member. And he doesn't want his daughter marrying a gaijin. And but yeah, Logan manages to turn things around. However, in the end, he ends up killing her father, and it becomes a case of she's kind of, yeah, I love you, but I totally could not marry you now because you just murdered my father. Even if it was for good reasons, you still killed my father, and yeah. It's really a heartbreaking tale. It also introduced the long-running supporting character of Wolverines, Yukio. Anyway, next up we've got Logan. Written by Brian K. Vaughan, creator of Runaways and Why the Last Man, as well as 100 Bullets artist Eduardo Riso. This was also, some of it was also utilized for the Wolverine. Namely, his being in Japan or near Hiroshima when the bomb was dropped. But yeah, it's a great story. As the back of the Dust Jacket puts it, Wolverine travels to a mysterious hill in Japan to come to terms with the ghost of a long-forgotten incident of his past, a moment that reforged him in the flames of love, death, and destruction. If he's not careful, these ghosts could keep him there forever. But yeah, beautifully drawn, excellently written, highly recommended. Next up, we've got Origins. So, Wolverine's origin was one of the big mysteries of comics for a good long while. Hints were dropped over the years. Oh yeah, he did this. He met this, and but Origins said, okay, this is Wolverine's past to a point. And so it turned out he was born James Howlett in Alberta, Canada in the late 1800s. Contrary to what the movie says, he was born in the 1880s, not the 30s. But he was a sickly young boy, and he had two friends. A young girl named Rose, who was basically hired to be his playmate, and the son of the groundskeeper, Dog Logan. Well, one night, young James wakes up and hears a commotion downstairs. He rushes downstairs, and the groundskeeper, Mr. Logan, has a shotgun trained on his father and ends up killing his father. And in that moment, young James pops his claws for the first time and rushes Mr. Logan, and runs him through, and then explains that he wasn't your father. I'm your father, as he dies. And so Dog convinces Rose and Logan to make good their escape. Meanwhile, Dog works on tracking them down and has shifted the blame of everything from his father to James. But we see where Wolverine comes from. Or we finally get that. Oh, so that's how Wolverine grew up. And first off, before we get to the final one, some honorable mentions. First off is the Wolverine story Get Mystique. Now, Get Mystique, as I recall, was set shortly after Messiah Complex. Either way, it's set after Mystique has betrayed the X-Men one too many times, and Cyclops basically sends Logan to go get her. We also find out, as this takes place after House of M, when Wolverine got his memories back, we find out just how it is that Wolverine and Mystique came to know each other. Next up, we got Blood Hungry. Blood Hungry was a story that ran in Marvel Comics Presents, and it introduced Cyber and was set in Madripoor. And Cyber is one of the bigger Wolverine villains who's kind of just stayed focused on Wolverine. Whereas numerous allies of his have gone to Madripoor, usually in his name. But yeah, this was kind of a big thing. It's also really trippy. The Sam Keith visuals really, you know, are just super trippy. And our last honorable mention, this is kind of a guilty pleasure, and I know I talk about how Days of Future Past has kind of been watered down by add-on stories, and this is actually one of those add-on stories, but Weapon X, Days of Future Now. So, Frank Thierry wrote a Weapon X title for a while, but after a while doing it, he was told, "Hey, look, you got to cap it off." So the book got canceled, but he was like, "Okay, look, let me just do a miniseries to tie up all the loose ends." Okay, and so we got Days of Future Now, which kind of sort of ties to Days of Future Past. It kind of looks like they're the same. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but there's some fun stuff going on with it, and I like it because of that. Anyway, so the number one Wolverine story, and this is really close between this and Origins, but Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X, which tells the story of Wolverine being forcibly recruited into the Weapon X project and experimented on, and getting the adamantium bonded to his skeleton and turned into an animal, and yeah, it's some crazy stuff, and it's really good and beautifully drawn. Windsor Smith drew it and wrote it, so yeah. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. The weekly comic book roundup will be back this week, and will be doubling up from last week and this week. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified when I put up new content. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal are in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard, bub.